Hello and welcome back to the channel. It's the two of us again today. I'm
We're
here
back.
with Ollie again, and we have a little series unannounced, the conscious conversations. Before pressing record, we thought we would call this from now on, when it's the two of us, conscious conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the idea was to publish this on my channel as well as on your channel too.
Yeah, it's going to be on both of our channels, so wherever
Yes.
you're watching this, in the description you can find the link to the other person's channel depending on whose channel you're watching this video from.
Right, and yours was the Pleiadian transmission.
Yeah, that's my sort of
Yes.
more recently created channel, Pleiadeantransmissions. Yours has been up for a
Up
good
for a
while
while.
longer.
Yes.
A few years at this point, I would say.
That's right. This is super spontaneously today. We felt a call to speak about something specific today, more in a conversational, less of an interview style. And I've already talked about the Matrix on my channel a couple of months ago. I think I published a video where I'm speaking about the Matrix in general and how, especially during a spiritual awakening, you become very aware of what the Matrix actually is. But today is a bit more specific. So the idea was to talk about, because we always talk about new earth, the new world, new earth. But then there must obviously be an old earth when we talk about the new earth. So today the idea was to talk about the old earth matrix,
Mm-hmm.
and how that connects to the hive mind in the population. So
Yes,
that was
indeed.
the idea.
Yeah, that was the idea we sort of came up with.
Yeah.
And it's something that we kind of have been talking about a lot more recently. I feel that it's kind of necessary to talk about what you're leaving behind, or what you're deprogramming within your subconscious, in order to make this shift and go through this spiritual awakening. You kind of have to bring a certain amount of awareness to these old structures. We sort of refer to it as the old earth matrix. Some people may just call it the matrix, or the old earth, or the system. It can go by many different names. But we're kind of just speaking here to, I suppose, like the historic, imperial, deeply embedded structures that sort of predominate, especially in the West, that are essentially set up to actually limit consciousness expressing itself, and human beings being free to express in the ways that they feel called to express. And that was kind of as you said, that was the
calling.
The topic for today that we wanted to talk about.
So in a way we could say that, or would you agree with me when I said that old earth is actually the matrix in a way?
Yeah, I would say that the two are interconnected, or you could even call them the same thing in a way. Old earth, at least my interpretation, like my perspective on old earth, is anything that is dogmatic or linear in its way of thinking. It's heavily tied and connected to sort of societal structures, systems of education, old family system models, as well as ways in which people have been conditioned to relate to themselves and each other. And in a sense, it's kind of a reality that exists solely on a mental level. It's it's like a mental construct that basically from cradle to grave, if you're familiar with that expression, you know, from when you're born up until the point that you die, you've basically been sold a version of reality that is based on like a pre-existing paradigm of thought. And that thought, as it accumulates over time from when you're born, those thought forms, as they're sort of imposed upon you, start to create, well, on a physical level, a certain mapping within your brain, a certain composition of neural pathways, which then informs the way in which you're decoding reality and interpreting reality, and that reality that you believe to be real, in inverted commas, is what you could call the Matrix.
Yes.
And old Earth, in the sense that it is what we're kind of wanting to shift away from. We're wanting to open our minds to receive higher consciousness and break down these kinds of patternings and enforced thought forms that form a reality that is thought-based rather than being oriented in truth, something that comes from within that feels kind of sovereign. So in my understanding of it, the Matrix is the same thing as this old Earth.
Yeah, that to me that felt right too, that we're actually speaking of one and the same thing here when we use words like the old Earth and the Matrix, and then we call it the old Earth Matrix.
Right, exactly, yeah. It also has kind of like a nice ring to it, you know, like it kind of surmises what you're talking about, like, quite well. Something you also want to like evolve out of. It's old,
stale. You can, I feel, well, for me, for us, we often talk about the collective field, you and me, in our conversations.
Yeah.
The collective field, of course, there's a global collective field, but there's also a collective field within different countries, societies, you know, cultures. And what I find so, how do you say, tangible, you know, how you could almost touch it. When you shift, your whole beingness shifts and evolves during this awakening, and New Earth is our true nature, you know, that it almost feels more and more and more unbearable to even navigate within old Earth structures, and that in different collective fields all over the globe, there are, in our experience, varying degrees of old Earth structures intact. So you go somewhere where there's like a very, you know, let's take the example of a place that is super Catholic, or, you know, where there's like some sort of dogma in the collective field. That would be an example for old Earth energy residing in the collective field of that specific place.
Yeah.
So wherever we go, we always sense that very, very much what's going on here, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
Would you agree?
I would agree. I would agree with that. Sort of every, like, you speak of the collective field, and you know, in a way we're all kind of part of a shared human experience. Like, we're a collective consciousness, but at the same time we're also individuals, and there are different people, or different souls rather, who are at different levels of evolution or devolution, which whether we'll talk about that in this video, I don't know. There are different frequencies and different energies, and that forms kind of like this collective field, which at this point is so different. You know, you can go from like one end of the spectrum, you know, sort of only identified with the mind, only identified with this old Earth Matrix, you know, like, as we say, like, Ethel at the checkouts, that's all I am.
That's all I know. Yes.
That's all I ever will be.
Yes.
That's sort of a bit of a David Icke-ism there.
Oh, yeah.
Who's been incredibly pivotal in our kind of shift and illuminating, lots of things in our consciousness.
We love to quote him, by the way, so quite a few things that we say are actually quotes of David Icke. And
it's not all our knowledge. It's kind of, some of it I feel like we intuit and it comes from within ourselves as we're kind of starting to grow and evolve out of these old ways of being, but a lot of it is taken,
it's
it's inspiration from people like David Icke and Credo Mutwa and spiritual teachers and other kind of renegades and things of that sort. But it's different in its quality in different places, as you mentioned. Where we live in Ireland right now, would have a different kind of like energy or vibe or frequency you would feel in the collective. Here it's historically like a very puritanical sort of like by the book Catholic sort of culture, which I can see is fading out in some ways in the younger generations, but you can sense how in the collective field there is this sort of felt sense feeling of like guilt and shame and I can't express myself in this way, or even shame around sexuality and things like that because of this very specific quality of programming, actually, and indoctrination, which comes from this force, which I think you've alluded to and touched on in your channel, but haven't spoke about specifically yet.
Yes,
but,
it's all pointing towards this force that I'm talking about. But I think that really requires a dedicated video. Maybe even with the two of us soon, because there's actually so much to talk about that it's sometimes hard to cover that within even one conversation like that. You know, this is just a very small frame today to give people an idea what we feel the old earth matrix is and what the hive mind, which we're going to also speak about today. We've touched on it already, but you're completely right, and I feel like maybe the example of Ireland is a good one because that's the place we currently live, where you can sense in the collective field the structures of the old earth, the forces that actually also block people from evolving, I feel. And that's the case in many places of the world, but when I drive through a town and it's sometimes shocking to me, I still see young people, teenagers in the school uniforms even, that to me is a very, very, very prime example of old earth. Wow, this is still happening. The indoctrination of our children wearing these uniforms, where everyone is made to be uniform and become some sort of repeater of what they've been fed, is still going on. And that's obviously, that's not just for Ireland, but, that's anywhere in the world. The school system is a brilliant example for how that's old earth, obviously, kept alive, and people who awaken, of course, we grow out of these very, very toxic structures, but they're still going on. And then we see that, and it's kind of alienating for us to see that, or how people on a Sunday, they go to their like Sunday services, and then, it's just this. That's just simple examples of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's both alienating and empowering, because on the one hand, it's empowering because you can see just how stale and outdated it is.
Yeah.
Just to see, teenagers wearing a school uniform and to sort of be shocked, like, at the realization that same indoctrination is going on.
And happened to us.
And happened to
us. In the past,
Yeah, I mean, it's happened to everyone in some ways. Like, to have that kind of... I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, to have that kind of awareness. It can be alienating in a field, maybe more so in a place like here in Ireland,
Mm-hmm.
where you don't find in general as much conscious. I don't want to make sweeping statements, of course, but you know, general sense in the population, there isn't so much this quality of like consciousness expansion.
Yeah.
That's the word, progressiveness.
Yeah,
it doesn't feel
it
as
doesn't
progressive.
feel very
You know, there's still
progressive.
people going to
Yeah.
church and saying the rosary, and you know,
Yeah.
I mustn't sin, I mustn't
Right.
do anything against the
Yeah.
word of God, and
Yeah.
oh, the priest, he's a trustworthy person.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of like, I don't see so much expansion there.
No.
And you know, we're talking about, you know, Christmas and
Oh God, the
whole sort of
the whole
agenda
hoax
behind
around these
that,
things.
and
That's
you know,
also
you're getting
yeah,
Black
like
Friday promotions spammed
yeah,
everywhere. You know,
It's-
these days, and
yeah. It's like I feel whenever you get in touch with a structure of the old earth, there's always this like very dusty, outdated sense of stagnation in there. You know, and you
Yeah.
have that with, okay, we've been repeating these holidays over and over and over again. For example, Christmas, but nobody really questions what are we actually doing there.
Yeah.
Well, we're contributing to consumerism as one part, you know, or another example, the medical system, when people they completely give their power away because they feel only the Western medical system can heal us. You know, classic example for old earth.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe it's important to talk about for a being like us or many who might watch this video, what does it feel like when you get in touch with old earth's energies? It feels like, to me, it feels very jarring and highly programmed, of course.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel
Yeah.
it's important to touch on, you know, saying all these things here. It's not, I think it's important just before we go on to speak about like how it feels to navigate in these old structures.
Yeah.
I feel it's important to sort of bring a certain amount of like pro-evolutionary sort of language or interpretations, because it's one thing to be aware of these old structures and you know, you can make fun of them and laugh about them, and in some ways it is kind of hilarious.
Yes.
But at the same time, you know, it's important to acknowledge, well, how does this kind of awareness serve you going through a spiritual awakening?
Yeah.
You know, and I can definitely speak in my experience, as you sort of become more conscious or raise your frequency, your vibration, when you start to move through these structures and systems of the old earth, there is something that's more repellent or repulsive. You know, it's in direct contrast to something like nature, for example. You know, synthetic
comes to
yeah,
mind.
you become aware of this synthetic quality, something that is oppressive and contracted, and also in some ways quite disturbing. Like, there's certain things that have quite an eerie, sinister, disturbing quality to them.
Once
like,
you've seen enough about it, it
yeah,
becomes
like
eerie and
certain things, you know, I'm not trying to, again, paint everything with one brush,
Yeah.
but, you know, certain things like kids' movies or kids' TV shows,
Yeah.
or things that, you know,
Yeah.
once of a time you may have thought of as being relatively innocent,
Yes.
suddenly don't seem so innocent anymore.
Yes.
Or, you know, like, even down to like food products, you know, like, oh, you know, this kind of sweet thing that's given to a child, and, you know, on a deeper level, you know, on that frequency level, you start to feel how it has something quite malevolent to it, whether it's, you know, something that's presenting itself one way but is actually something different, and then also what it's actually made of. You know, tangibly you can feel that synthetic quality, which when you start to orient with something more organic within yourself, it starts to repel you and push you out. You might feel that sense of kind of eeriness or something a bit like
Definitely nothing that would serve your soul's evolution.
no,
Like it
definitely
would
not.
like rather contribute
Yeah.
to like a devolution.
Mhm.
You've touched on it
Yeah,
earlier.
if that's all you
Yes,
know.
if that's
like,
all you know. Yeah, yeah.
So maybe now would be a good time to talk about the
Yeah.
hive mind, because
Yes,
we've kind of
that's a
spoke
good
about
way.
like the matrix and the old earth matrix and
Yeah.
you know different aspects of that, and shared a bit about our experience.
The hive mind is inevitably a part of everything we talked about.
Yeah,
Because maybe I can say something if that's okay with you.
of course.
What
I'd love to hear your perspectives.
What comes to me when I think of the hive or feel into the hive mind is another quote of David Icke's, this repeater phenomena. You know, where when people go through the washing machine of old earth matrix, it makes them become actually repeaters. Repeaters of a system that feeds them something, is processed, and then that becomes their perceived reality.
Yes.
And then what I find so interesting is you have this phenomena of, let's take the example of the place we're living in, and again, that often we say, oh, people seem to look all the same, or people seem to develop these like archetypes or this very generic energy within the collective. And I'm not saying that because I want to like speak from a place of superiority or put myself.
That's very important.
I'm just speaking here from a purely observational standpoint, you know.
Yeah.
This phenomena of, oh, everyone seems to act, look, and speak in the same way. It's just like there's not much diversity there within this hive phenomena, or the hive mind doesn't leave much space for individuation. That's the thing that comes first to me.
Yeah.
But of course, you're free to speak also.
No, you've said many things. You've nailed it. You've said many things that I would totally agree with, and I feel like it for sure doesn't leave so much room for individuality or sovereignty or, you know, true expression. At least not unless it's within the confines of like this imposed kind of like paradigm of reality. Yeah. And again, this isn't coming from a place of like superiority or saying like, oh, you know, like
we're enlightened and the other one's not.
Better or not. It's maybe just to bring a certain amount of awareness to what maybe other people sort of notice, because I think that distinction has to be made between what is old and what is aligned with a newer, you know, more truthful quality of consciousness. Yes. And for sure, you know, like the people even start to, you know, like a hive mind, you know, if people are thinking in the same way or have been programmed or conditioned in the same way, you know, like to adhere to a certain interpretation of reality, then there are certain traits and attributes of that reality that start to be taken on by the person and then misidentified with as being their true self,
their identity.
You know, and from that relative perspective, you know, the ego self of that person, to use that word, believes that it is a separate, distinct individual with a certain amount of sovereignty and autonomy, making decisions that it believes to be its own, but are actually just decisions that are still within the confines of this system. Yes. And in my understanding, there is something deeper going on, whereby the hive mind is actually tapped into a force that is artificially intelligent in some way, that is a synthetic intelligence. And I don't think you can speak really about the hive mind without pointing, at least for now, to a certain force that's trying to integrate human consciousness
Yeah.
into itself.
Yeah.
It's difficult not to go into more detail for right now, but that would take a bit longer.
It would be an extra video,
but,
probably. Yeah.
Let's just say there is a non-benevolent force
On this.
that has historically had like influence on this planet and
Yeah.
has imposed certain ways of living by infiltrating the population, mainly through
Rule and divide.
very much so representatives here
Via
on behalf.
rule and divide and control.
That's it,
Yes.
for sure. And the ruling elite, the royal families,
Let's call them out. Let's
certain bloodlines, let's
Yeah.
say. If you want to learn more about this, you know, David Icke is a great source to go to.
Yes.
But basically, you know, this force has been imposing certain structures of control, rule divide, and filtering and funneling human attention and consciousness in a certain direction for thousands of years.
Centralizing power.
Centralizing power, and
Yeah.
now it's at a point whereby some people cannot distinguish between what is organic and inorganic.
Right.
And
Right.
this force, you could understand it, at least my like psychic interpretation and from what I've also read, is also like a hive mind. There are beings that make up this greater hive mind,
Yes.
namely reptiles, grey aliens,
Yeah.
tall whites, and various
Yes.
other parasites of this planet that have no right to be here.
Yeah.
I might add, that form this greater synthetic installation, exactly.
Which is then the Matrix. To round it up.
Which
Yeah.
you could call the Matrix, and
Yeah.
it's that force that is trying to infiltrate and hijack the human mind to make this hive mind here on the planet, and you could also then connect that back into the old Earth Matrix. You know, like the old Earth Matrix is the confines within which this hive mind exists, which is tied to this greater artificial hive mind of this dark force that people have called evil. At least that's my understanding anyway.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely spot on. And there is a thing we have observed. I'm sure we're not the only ones when it comes to the hive mind within people, that it has some sort of self-correcting tendency, or it wants to keep the narrative of the hive mind intact. And it's brilliantly described often as the Agent Smith effect.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, for the ones amongst you who have watched the Matrix movie, you know that who Agent Smith is. And when people live under, let's say, the spell, the manipulation and the control of the hive mind, what happens when you, within your vibration, do not conform in your presence to this hive mind, you know, it often actually, the collective often gets scared of a presence like that and wants to sort of self-correct its agenda, and then maybe even starts to attack people who think and speak in a different way. So that then would be the Agent Smith effect, you know, because the hive mind has to obviously wants to survive in a way.
It wants to maintain itself.
That's another attribute of the hive mind.
Yeah, totally agree. Anyone who doesn't conform, I mean, a great example that just comes to mind is the hippie movement in the 60s.
Yeah, right.
Basically, people started to individuate, express themselves, be more open emotionally, sexually, started to gather in groups.
Expand their consciousness.
Yes. You know, new organic ideas were coming through. Even the way people were dressing and looking was different.
Yeah.
The way people came together in community was different, you know, whether it worked or not is kind of like a different matter, but at least there was like a breaking away from the old system. And you can see just how heavily, when you look back into history, how this Agent Smith effect was playing out massively then, you know, massive government legislations like, okay, ban all psychedelics, even to the point of like, you know, well, you see it today, banning gatherings of people in groups, even for peaceful motivations and reasoning, you know, to protest genocide. You know, this is the Agent Smith effect playing out because people are differentiating from the hive mind. And the frequency, this denser frequency of this like old Earth matrix, which is where the hive mind lives, is trying to basically like either silence or subjugate these people or pull them back in by trying to like intimidate them or impose certain kind of like consequences, you know. And in some ways, you know, that kind of divide and rule strategy works, you know, like if you were to walk around and, you know, have LSD on your person or be, you know, taking LSD or another psychedelic substance of your own free will or something like that, you know, there would be consequences to it. So, or more recently, you know, you do gather in groups and you do say certain things that go against their narrative. There are consequences. You can be like an 80-year-old woman speaking out against genocide in Palestine, and the police are carrying you away. You know, this is
like it happened in the UK.
It happened in the UK in London. I forget the name of the group now, but they were peacefully protesting against the genocide that's ongoing in Palestine. And, you know, she's taken away by police. This is the old Earth matrix and this Agent Smith effect that you
level they have to go to,
playing itself out.
And why is that? Because, well, this force we called out today in our conversation, it's terrified of human beings becoming sovereign and liberating themselves from this prison. So it has to do everything, like almost, you know, the last desperate resort to, okay, let's make it all illegal that could possibly help them to free their minds or, you know, expand their consciousness. So it's actually very, very terrified. That's why it has to act so aggressively within the hive mind and the matrix structure. It's
like something very small and insignificant in relation to, you know, everything that's in existence, you know, the one being, the one consciousness, which is the soul. You know, it pales in comparison. It's just really making these kind of like shadow monsters on a wall, you know, like could be a tiny mouse and then a light shines a certain way and it looks like a terrifying monster. That's kind of the game it's playing, really. And the last thing it wants is humans waking up to the realization that we are co-creators of reality, and we have the freedom to create our own reality. We have the freedom to choose, and we have the freedom to think. And that's something that needs to be reclaimed, which I guess is why we're having these conversations today. You know, whether it goes anywhere, that's not the point to it. It's just to kind of maybe draw attention to some of these topics.
Well, just to have a conversation like that and people watching it, let alone that is old Earth matrix shattering and altering. So,
and hopefully inspires other people, or like, you know, maybe you've also been kind of like feeling that same level of like stale crustiness, or, you know, you've been walking through a supermarket and you're kind of like, oh god, like it's just some synthetic hell.
And the sounds they're playing, like, afterwards you come out.
Are these frequencies altering my brainwave patterns?
The stuff they're playing in the radio today, they have certain low vibrational frequencies, you know. And
so it's actually freeing in a way to talk about these things, and maybe you can resonate with that, and you could always like leave a comment, maybe talk about some of your experiences, or how certain things just don't seem to like be a match anymore, or how you even feel like you've been pushed out of this like old collective field, and maybe there's something that's calling you that feels bigger and more liberating. We've been taking lots of small and big steps along our sort of shared journey together as a couple, in the direction of like, becoming more free and sovereign. Of course, you can't make it all at once, not to create any illusion that we are still like not dependent, let's say, on that system in some ways. We still have a car, and we still we still fill up the car, and we still get food. We try to shop as consciously as possible, but it's about illuminating what feels old, and making those small changes, and it has to start somewhere,
and knowing that deep down within your soul you are free. It's also, I feel, an illusion to feel that you're not free. That you are already free, and it's just a bit of a game we're playing here on planet Earth.
It's an evolutionary game.
And
if I might add, I feel like the only reason this force really exists is to sort of further our own growth and evolution.
That's true.
It has no real power.
It doesn't have power.
God just wanted to kind of like, go through a bit of a test maybe, and
and also help other people,
evolve through the kind of challenge and difficulties, and it's all for fun. It's all for fun. So
we would be super curious about your own experiences. If someone wanted to leave a comment underneath, you're very welcome to do so. And I think we will upload this as well as on your channel.
It will be on both channels.
And I think we wrapped it up.
I think so.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Thanks for watching.
If you have any questions or comments, just leave them. See you next time.
See ya.
Bye.